practice or are you running a business? Valuation is the ultimate KPI.
Hey there, it's Mike Langford. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast, brought to you by Truelytics by Envestnet. This week on the show, I have Danielle White, CEO of Myriad Advisor Solutions, with me for a conversation about leaning into your strengths in your business life as a financial advisor or wealth management executive. Now, one quick note, Myriad Advisor Solutions is a member of the Truelytics Solutions Partner Network. Make sure you swing by truelytics.com/partner-directory to see a full list of companies that are there to help you and your team build, grow, and possibly transition your business. Okay, as always, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon, the YouTubes, or wherever you like to get your podcast jam on. And if you have a question or a suggestion for a guest or a topic for the show, hit us up. Simply go to truelytics.com and use that little contact form there, or shoot us an email, podcast@truelytics.com. Okay, let's get to our chat with Danielle White. Well, Danielle White, so wonderful to see you this morning. Welcome to the Modern Financial Advisor podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. This is so much fun. You and I were just kind of like, we're off to the races today. We're talking about Star Wars nerdiness. Well, okay, I was talking about Star Wars nerdiness. You were just polite enough to listen and not a lot. But no, it's great. We've already bonded wholeheartedly here. We're excited to get on with the show. So this is going to be a really interesting one, I think, because one of the fun things I like to do as I prepare for each podcast episode is I brainstorm like, what the heck are we going to talk about? Like, what's going to be interesting for the audience? And, usually I try to make sure it's connected to the solution that obviously the guest is providing, because that, works well for people. And so many times what ends up happening is it's somewhat subtle. It's like, okay, people understand like what Danielle White does with Myriad Advisor Solutions, excuse me. But, in our prep call, I started thinking, wow, there's some really cool stuff here. We really started talking about leaning into one's strengths, right? And not leaning into the areas that you struggle with. They're kind of weak, right? So I think we'll dive in there, right? So what are some of the core solutions that you and the Myriad team offer to advisors? And we'll kind of build off of that. And I think people will see where we're going on this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have kind of two sides of the house. One is the turnkey solution. So, really walking the business owner, the financial advisor from the kind of captive environment into the independent environment and really putting that business owner hat on. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made and a lot of options that have to be reviewed. So, we walk through all of those things to open a business. And that could be real estate all the way down to office supplies and really everything in between. And an ongoing support basis, we're helping with IT, HR, marketing as kind of like the high level modules or service aspects, and the breadth of services or the myriad of services.
I like it.
That's pretty vast. So, there's definitely areas that we go deeper in and areas that we just do surface level, but it's a lot of fun and just interesting, really, to work with all the different advisors building out their ideal practice.
I love it. I love it. So first of all, if you're watching, listening to this episode of the show, one of the things that I want to make sure that we level set right now is like, this is applicable for if you are a breakaway advisor or an advisor who's thinking about breaking away. If you are an advisor who's already running an existing business, right? And if you're a solo advisor or a multi-advisor shop, this is all going to be really relevant stuff for you, because one of the things you hit on there as you're describing the solutions that you provide is this is a business, right? And so whether you're solo or you are a multi-advisor shop, it is a business, and there's a lot of things that come along with running a business that frankly not everybody's prepared for. And I say this often on this show that most advisors got their start as stockbrokers, or at a minimum kind of in a sales role, right? They applied or responded to a recruitment pitch, come be a financial advisor. They joined a firm. They passed their Series 7 and so forth, and they started kind of selling. But at a certain point in time, especially if you're breaking away, oh, guess what? If you need toner in the printer, somebody it's not there because you got
Yeah.
to go get it, right? This is a business, right? Somebody else used to do that for you at the old big firm. Now you've got to do it. How do you so let's kind of start with that person in mind first. If I'm an advisor and I'm at a big shop or even if I'm at a relatively small shop and I'm thinking about kind of going out on my own, what are some of the core steps that you're talking to that advisor about right at the beginning, like before they get the business rolling?
Yeah, a lot of times we even take a step back and figure out the underlying reason of why they want to.
Mm,
The initial reason that a lot of advisors think is like, oh, it's more money.
yeah.
And so it's like, duh, why wouldn't I do it? And so from our side, you can get more money in a lot of different ways, but are you truly wanting to be a business owner? We see a lot of business owners get drugged down in the weeds and end up running the business instead of doing what they went into business to do. And so we're here to help like mitigate that from happening. So we're trying to get an underlying reason, I guess, as to what's driving the change
Yeah.
and then really building off of that. So it might be more money, and that's a lot of times what it is. So, all right, you're doing it for more money. So you're probably not going to be the one that's wanting to order the toner or to be cleaning the bathroom or what have you. So thinking through what their true strengths are, what they actually want to be doing day to day, mapping out kind of what that looks like and allowing the opportunity for us to assist or find other providers to assist in picking up the slack, so to speak, of the day to day operational pieces so that they can focus on being the financial advisor. And maybe technology is something that they're really passionate about and love to tinker with, and so all right, you can go ahead and do that. But also, evaluating, is it an area you should be spending time? So just because I love technology or because I love doing marketing, should I be
Mm,
doing it? Is that really where it's wise for me to be spending my time? You said you were making this move to make more money, but now you're spending all your time on marketing. And is it a loss leader at that point of like, I'm wasting all my time, so to speak, on the marketing tasks and not really what's making me money? So just peeling the onions back, you know, all the
yeah,
layers.
yeah. I tell you, I can speak from personal experience as a business owner, right? So it is really easy to go, I'm going to do this myself, or I'm going to do all this type of stuff. And next thing you know, you find yourself doing a whole bunch of stuff that, yeah, maybe you actually don't mind doing or you find interesting. But as I was, kind of alluding to at the early steps of this is that you weren't leaning into your strengths, however, or the things that you should be working on. Like, so again, the marketing one's a fantastic one. Every business needs marketing. You should be spending money and investing on marketing because marketing sows the seeds for sales. That doesn't mean if you're a solo advisor, you now need to become an expert marketer, right? You do need marketing, but let's talk about who's the best or what's the best way to do that to have your presence out there to make sure that you're top of mind in the consideration sets for prospects that are out there. And then maybe you're the closer, right? That when
Yep.
those leads come in, you're the one who's closing the deal, but you don't need to be the one who's spending all your time on social media, all your time creating campaigns or working on the website and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, the best way to explain it to a lot of the advisors is like you're staying up to date on the trends, you're staying up to date on the fintech landscape, you're staying up to date on all the like white papers, research, all the different models, performance management. Like that's really where they're staying up to date and knowledgeable, but they're not spending their time on the latest and greatest technology or like Windows 11. What does that mean
Mm,
for supporting your computer? Nor should they be. And so, really finding the experts, as I do for financial advising, like I don't know much about financial advising, so I am not going to be doing that. I will
yeah,
find somebody that can hopefully make me money and at least preserve my wealth, if not grow
right.
it. So, definitely taking those things and making sure you're putting the money where it needs to be put because it will more than likely return tenfold.
Yeah.
Like I have a perfect example of when we started out. It was like I was doing the graphic design and the website development, and like, yes, technically I know how to do those things. But the second we hired like a graphic designer or a web developer, something that took me 4 hours to do took them like 15 minutes. So
Yeah.
like the output that we were getting was insane. And it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it cost me a little bit more money, but how much money was it actually costing me in time that I could have been
Yeah.
doing other tasks?
That is a spectacular point that I think advisors probably use that when they talk to their clients occasionally is like, hey, listen, yes, technically you could go out there and do all the research you wanted to do about building a portfolio that's going to help you achieve your goals. You could do all those hours of research and you could put the hours in on a weekly, monthly basis, whatever, to review your accounts and see if you need to rebalance and all those types of things. You could do that and you probably could do a halfway competent job, but there are some things you're missing there. You could be using that time to spend time with your family. You could be using that time to make more money in your career where your strengths are. And also there's the emotional element to it. Like, I don't know how you feel about this. And when you start wrestling with something that is outside of your true wheelhouse of competency, man, does it get frustrating really quick. And the emotional pieces start bubbling up. And if you make a mistake on your portfolio and you did it yourself, well, it could be disastrous if you just ride it into the ground because your brain won't let you let go. One thing that kind of popped up as I was thinking about you were describing your story about you started doing some of the graphic design and all that type of stuff. Uh, there is a reality of some advisors. I imagine if they're breaking away and starting their own thing, it's they have a limited budget,
Hmm.
right? So some people will do things because, like, hey, listen, I don't have $10,000 to have a graphic designer do all this type of stuff. So I'll do some of this lightweight work myself. Maybe graphic design is not the right decision make, but like I can't afford whatever this XYZ function is to do. How do you help those advisors prioritize where to spend their dollars, right? Because I would imagine, like, that's a real conversation that happens frequently is like, hey, okay, you only have so much money.
Yep.
Where's the best bang for your buck, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, there's lots of things that are going to be more impactful up front. And it's going about things more in a phased approach. So it's not necessarily saying we're not going to do those things at all,
Mm,
but it's like, okay, we might readdress this in a year from now.
yeah.
Like one thing that I always see a lot of new business owners spending money on that it's like you can wait is like promotional items.
Mm,
I think they're really excited about having their own stamp and their name and like being like, heck yeah, this is mine. I did this. And it's, spending all that money on the swag. And it's like, okay, that's not something that's actually going to be bringing something to your bottom line. It's actually probably going to take away from it for a while. So
yeah.
that's something, you can hold off on. But really finding the things that are going to help you be efficient and get up and running as quickly as possible. A lot of that is tends to be around technology and then mostly addressing things more from like a legal or compliance standpoint. So it's like
Yeah.
the have tos, like you don't have an option, you have to do these things. And so really addressing it more from, okay, you don't have an option, this is something you have to do, so this is going to be taken out of the budget. Then looking at more of like the efficiencies and scalability so that way you can get to the fun stuff faster.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the conversations surround more what would make you more efficient because that doesn't look the same for everyone because everybody has different skill sets, everybody has different background or people in their office that can support different tasks. So really evaluating where are your team's strengths and where are your weaknesses and trying to fill the gaps of the weakness so that you have more of that holistic approach.
I love what you're saying there that, it's prioritizing the business operation, right? I like that you led off with the promotional products as this thing because I think that's true. I think people are like, I'm going to hand out business cards. Okay, that's fine. You're going to need business cards when you meet somebody. They're like, do you have a card? The answer is yes, I do. However, you don't need lots of brochures. You don't need pens with your name on it. You don't need to be handing out t-shirts and things like that. Why? Well, first of all, that pen, chances are, is just going to get thrown in a desk drawer somewhere or left in a bag somewhere.
Yep.
Your business card, even, right? Like, okay, it's awesome, but make sure it's driving people to your website or driving to somebody to your LinkedIn profile so you can stay connected. Because the real deal is, like, you want to be bringing on new prospects. You want to be converting those prospects into clients, and promotional materials don't do that. What will make it more viable for you, as I'm hearing you're saying, is like making sure the business runs, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what a
Step
wacky
one.
concept.
Step
Yeah.
one.
Well, because like you bring somebody in the door, and like, what if it's like it's a hot mess every time you bring somebody into the door, right? Like you have no idea what to, oh, okay, what, like as an example, like what does the onboarding process look like for a new client,
Yep.
right? Like you knew what it was when you worked for Bigco. What does it look like when you bring on a new client into UCO? Your financial, Mike Financial, right? Like what does that process look like? Do you have the paperwork or the online forms ready to rock and roll? Have you practiced what that might feel like so you don't feel like a rookie? Yeah,
Well, and
when you're
even like boiling it down to like who's going to be doing those tasks. Like, is it you
oh
that's
yeah,
going to be doing them? Is it like your support staff that's going to be doing it? Is it the technology tool that you have elected to use? Like, figuring out actually who's responsible sometimes is half the battle, because you may have the process outlined and you may be like, okay, A through Z, I understand these are the steps, but like, who's owning that?
yeah, that's true. Well, that kind of leads me to my next topic I really want to dive into, and that's systematizing things, right? Because a large percentage of RIAs, and so this is not just breakaways, right? Now let's get into the people they have operating businesses. Maybe the business has been in business for 10 years, right? But a large percentage of RIAs and financial advisors operate as solopreneurs. We know this, that is just, I think it's the majority are just independent operators, right? If you want to call it that. And then even more are like, the next big junk is next big bunch. Thank you. Mike can talk here is five or less. If you actually go do the analysis, like most RIAs have five or fewer advisors under the roof, right? So it's a
Yep.
really small team.
Yep.
And so when businesses are that small, there really hasn't oftentimes been that much time invested in creating systems, right? There are routines for sure, but they aren't usually systems that have been tested and routinized so that they're like, okay, this is effective and efficient. As you were talking about, you talked about efficiencies to make the business run. So what are some of the areas that you see the biggest lifts coming from for advisors and firms when it comes to implementing systems that are the kind of the necessary things for running a business? What are you like when you come into an already a shop that's operating, go, all right, this is where we're going to spend some time.
Yeah. So I would say it's really in their tech stack.
Okay.
More times than not, when we're entering or taking on a new client, we're seeing that they have anywhere from like 3 to 5 different systems or applications or things that they've invested in and are paying like monthly fees for. And they're not even tapping into the full capability of those resources. And sometimes they're even paying for applications that might cross over and do some of the same things. And so it's really addressing like what are they trying to accomplish out of it. Sometimes it could just be to like enhance that whole lifestyle business aspect. Sometimes
Mm,
it can be to just streamline the onboarding process for getting new clients. Sometimes it can be to help with the portfolio management. And so there's different like pros and different cons to each and every fintech platform.
yeah.
And so what we try to do is figure out, A, what are you using it for? Is there areas that we can enhance how you're using it, actually build out the platform more complete? And then the other big issue in across the industry that we run into all the time is like different applications not even speaking to each other. So you may
Yeah.
have an application that gets you from like A to C, and then the next application gets you from like D to M.
Yeah.
But there's nothing for those two to communicate from the C to D, and it's like a manual process. Well, a lot of the fintech platforms out there have open APIs and things so that you can connect them, And so just even bridging those gaps helps tremendously. So there's a wide variety as to kind of how you can help evaluate and look at those areas of improvement. But from our side, the first and foremost spot that we stop is really in the technology, because just modern day business world, technology is kind of ruling the roost, as
Yeah.
we spoke on prior to jumping on. But that's I'd say where you can really tap in and enhance the process, and then just how are things moving along.
It's so funny you mentioned that, and I think we often take for granted how quickly technology has improved
Yeah.
our lives and it accelerated things. If you think, put it this way, if we believe the statistic, and I don't think we have any reason to not believe it, that the average age of a financial advisor is like 62 or somewhere in the neighborhood of 60.
Mhm.
Okay, well, great. Like those people have been in the workforce for somewhere close to 40 years, right? Well, I haven't been in the workforce that long, but I do remember when email was a brand new thing. Like when I'm the this is one of my favorite like claim to fame. It's not really claim to fame, but something I think is really interesting. I am a member of the generation that was the last people to become adults before the internet
Yeah.
was the thing, right? So in other words, when I entered the workforce, there was no internet on your desk, right? There was networked computers, but they were connecting to mainframes that were in the building effectively, right? There
Mhm.
was no like you couldn't surf the web. There was no email. There was no texting, right? Last generation to just like actually get into the workforce and have to be adults before the internet became a thing. So I actually have active memory of like what life was like before that. And then it's not too hard to go, you know what? I remember before we had cloud storage for like so people could share whether your firm is using Microsoft's Drive, whatever they call it, OneDrive, or
Yeah.
you're using a Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever. Well, you wouldn't even imagine doing business now without some sort of shared DocuShare type of thing. So the point you're making is so important. Like, hey, look, there's probably some technologies available to you and your business, and some of those technologies are can be integrated well to not only save you time, to help you do things that you're not even doing now, so offer more services to your clients, or to avoid error. Like how
Yeah.
many times you take a piece of paper and type it into another place? Well, did you have to type it? Could have just been imported.
Yeah.
you know, so many awesome things. I love that you brought up the integration piece.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that always surprises me is they're not even aware of what they're paying for half the time. It's like, "Oh, I
Mm,
have all these tools. This is a monthly fee." And it's like, "Oh, I'm paying for it for this." And it's like, "Well, did you know that it could also do this for you?" And they're like, "What? I had no
yeah.
idea."
We had a guest on, and I awful for forgetting his name, and I'm sure I'll remember it after this. But it's always the way it happens. Like, oh, that guy, so, but he was talking about how easy it is to set up some of the security features
Mhm.
in your Microsoft Office suite and so and your Windows solution, right? And well, I think that's an important conversation to have, and I'm sure you and your team talk about those types of things. Is hey, look, whether you're SEC registered or state registered, there's going to be some expectations of you have data security, right?
Yeah.
Information security, particularly as it relates to personally identifiable information for your clients. And no, most of us aren't experts on how to navigate all the ins and outs, all the switches that I can have on that maximize the security level while also allowing us to do our job without it being a total pain in the butt to get to something.
Mhm.
Like things like two-factor authentication and so forth. It's like getting that stuff set up. To your point, you're already paying for it. It already exists as a feature in what you're paying for.
Yeah.
Maybe like there are encrypted cloud drives. We talked about cloud drives. Like you can set an encryption on there. So in the event that somebody were to get in there, they can't access anything. Right.
Exactly. Well, and I think that brings up another point, is just in the world of small business, a lot of times advisors and just small business owners in general will be like, "Oh, I'm not, a target for those security breaches or for somebody to hack. Like, I'm too small."
hmm
And I think that's a big learning curve for us in education for the small business, is like, actually they're counting on the fact that you think that way. and that you are probably going to be the target because they think, oh, they're thinking I'm hitting the big co, and they're the ones that have all the security in place. So it's a lot harder for them. Where it's like, if I just hit the small advisor or the small office, like they're not going to have anything. And
Yeah,
so for us, that's a huge piece of like educating and
yeah,
ensuring you have baseline security and protection.
yeah,
And it's like just, and it's not expensive. I think that's
yeah.
also kind of a misnomer, is like, it's going to cost me so much money to protect myself. It can be very cost efficient. So just doing the small things that can protect you tenfold is so important.
Like even little things like, hey, what's a strong password?
Yeah.
Like, what is a strong password for you and your business? Because the number of people they still every year there's a publishing like people get hacked, and it turns out the number one password is still password. Like people still use password as their password or
Yeah.
some variation of password 123 or something like that. It's like, guys, there are password techniques that you can remember with ease, right?
Yeah.
So you don't like, "Oh, I can't remember it." So it's like, but you could it's actually not that difficult to create one that's very easy to remember that you would think of
Yep.
and that you could use, and it's unique to every service you use, so you don't have to worry about like, "Oh, once I hack one solution, now I have the password." Because by the way, we all used to do that.
Yeah.
I got a great password, I got used to it, I can type it without even looking. And now I use that password for everything. Well, great. If somebody hacks one account, they now have your password for literally everything.
Yeah.
So let's not do that.
Yeah.
Unsecured Wi-Fi, right? Like,
Yeah.
have a strong password on your Wi-Fi at home because I don't know about you. I live in a side street. We're in this little like a golf course community, right? So it's nice. People thinking, oh, it's affluent. People won't mess. To your point, maybe this is an easy target. You can just drive by and probably find all the open Wi-Fi's around the neighborhood and go like, oh, here we go. I'm in.
Well, and
Uh,
just like taking that like train of thought like with you day in and day out, because it's like, okay, you might have all the protection at your home and you're like, my Wi-Fi at home is like really strong and awesome and I have all these like firewalls in place, etc. Well, I'm gonna go down to the coffee shop and join their open Wi-Fi, and it's like, okay, now you just
yeah,
threw all of that protection out the window. So it's like figuring out, how you're working, how you're going to be interacting day to day,
yeah,
and protecting your actual machine, not necessarily like how or
yeah.
where you're accessing.
So smart, so smart. So this is great. This is, by the way, this is all really good stuff. See, we didn't even have this in our prep doc. We just like ran on this. So I love it. But this is something that you guys talk about with people, and they probably aren't necessarily thinking about this. Oh, that's business operation stuff, but it is right. It's
Yeah.
protecting you, it's protecting the client, it's making sure the business runs smoothly. Like because you know what brings business to a screeching halt when you find out that you've been hacked, right?
Yeah.
And that somebody has got access to information they shouldn't have had. That really throws a monkey wrench into your week. Let's shift gears a little bit because this is an area and it came up in our prep call and it delighted me because this is one of my favorite topics. It's building a lifestyle business or running a lifestyle business, right? And I think this builds on the leaning into your strengths and the systematizing of the necessary stuff. And the reason why this delights me is I love that it's a lifestyle business for many advisors. I really do.
Mhm.
Like I celebrate it. It's a wonderful thing that a person could start a business that has really strong recurring income and allows them to live a very affluent life and serve their clients for potentially generations of clients, right? And offer these wonderful services that help those people achieve their life goals. So I think it's great. And oftentimes you'll hear people refer to a lifestyle business and it's almost a derogatory comment, but I don't feel it is, right? I think it's a wonderful thing, but all that being said, not all lifestyle businesses are created equal, right? Some of them just kind of putter along with the lifestyle business owner kind of never really figuring stuff out, and then some of them are thriving, like they run like a well-tuned machine, and like yeah, man, like I come in here and I know what my meetings look like, like client pipeline, da 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 da. So I guess the question is, what do you think it takes for to ensure an advisor has a thriving lifestyle business in today's environment, 2023?
Yeah, so it's like a multitude of things. So I think it's a little bit of, playing into the strengths, identifying where your strengths are, what staff you may need to help support your weaknesses or just things you just don't want to do. But then also utilizing your time effectively. So identifying all the tasks, identifying all the things that you are responsible for and want to be doing or need to be doing, and like batching those tasks into different parts of your day. So if there's more administrative things that you have to handle, like batch all those tasks together and do them all at once. Like instead of doing some in the morning, some in the afternoon, some at night, you're way more efficient and can and get things accomplished faster if you're doing similar tasks in the same time frame. It's just human nature, kind of how our brains function. So just structuring your day a little bit more like that in regards to,
Mm,
administrative strategy, business development, thinking about the ebb and flow through your day and tapping into like when do I have more energy? Should I be doing those things in the morning or in the afternoon? That's different for every person. So just looking at things from that perspective. But then even coming up higher out of yourself and looking at it from like a practice longevity standpoint, I think a big area that is not tapped into enough from the financial advisor perspective is that generational wealth and having kind of
mm,
the focus on that. So you might have the clients being the parents, and that could be the client relationship today, but ensuring that you're building the relationship with their children and knowing that you're going to be keeping that client kind of ongoing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like the advisor has this relationship with x child. You could bring in like a junior fa
mm.
and help build that portfolio from that perspective, but not looking at things so short-sighted and that I have xyz client and my life is great, my book of business, my AUM is awesome, and then it's like, oh, all these people are slowly passing away.
Yeah.
My AUM's going down, and like what's happening? Like how do you maintain that and capture that and make sure that you have the longevity of the practice, because that's going to address a lot of the lifestyle aspect. It's like you may be great today, but what's it going to look like in the future?
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit of the combination. So, where am I being successful? How can I be, living life the way I want to be living it, and managing my practice that way? But you also have to look at the practice and like how you're handling the clients and their assets.
Yeah. It's so important what you said about building relationships with the extended family or the heirs or whatever, because every advisor who's been in business for a decade or more has experienced a scenario in which you log on in the morning and you notice some assets are missing.
Hmm.
Well, that's weird, or and oh, Joe and Sue left, right? Or whatever. Like, oh, why? Well, uh, they moved, or and if they're older, guess what? Their kids said, it's time to take over. Mom and dad will move you over to my advisor or whatever that is. And so building those relationships is really important, especially if it's a lifestyle business, right? If you're not actively looking to grow this business, like you got it to a point where you're making, three, four, $500,000 a year, great, robust lifestyle. You've got 100 clients, everything's rocking and rolling. Well, that business will shrink over time
Yeah.
if you're not occasionally bringing on a new client or ensuring that the assets you have are really sticky, right? Like, okay, I
Yeah.
I have Joe and Sue as clients. I want to make sure that I get Brian and Riley and as their children on board as well. Have an actual relationship with them. My firm does, at least,
Yeah.
because I don't want this stuff disappearing, because that happens a lot, right? People just ride the business into the ground and it decays over time.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's crazy. So yeah, lifestyle matters, but keep it rocking.
Yeah.
um,
Don't be like short-sighted in that
yeah,
lifestyle. It's like,
yeah,
how long do you want that lifestyle to last?
yeah. Well, it's so funny because that leads us right into the kind of one of our other topics that I wanted to cover is the value of the business, right? Like as we were just talking about, like anything left untended eventually will decay, right? You'll have, because hey, listen, if you're 70 years old as a financial advisor, you're like, hey, this is great. Well, chances are your clients are around 70 years old too. And at some point in time, they go into net redemption. They start consuming the assets that they built over time. So you can't rely on it to be a consistent income all the way to whenever you decide you're checking out. But let's talk a little bit about the business value, because we, that's a big topic on this show, right? I mean, Truelytics was originally a valuations calculator, and then it became an advisor transition management platform to function on a lot of the different elements of transition. So, valuation, succession planning, mergers and acquisitions have always been a big topic on this show. But during the prep call, you mentioned that one thing you often have to work with to help advisors understand is that their business has value,
Yeah.
that it's not just an income derived by serving a client roster. Like, this is a business, right? Somebody may want to buy it someday, or you may want to transition it to somebody else someday. So would you mind sharing like how you approach that conversation with clients, and what have you learned over the years working with advisors on the concept of business value?
Yeah. So it's a different approach, depending on the advisor, primarily based on kind of the age of the
Yeah.
advisor. So it's like, are you looking to build this? Are you looking to sustain this? Are you looking to essentially make this move and then retire? And so identifying, what their goal is, where they're at in that process. It's almost like they're same consultation that they're having with their clients. Like, how much longer are we going to need to do this? Are we building your
Mm,
wealth? Are we going to maintain your wealth? Are we looking to spend the wealth? So it's similar in nature. So it's like kind of ironic that we're having to have the consultation from that side.
yeah.
But, figuring out, does it make sense to bring on younger staff that you're going to be training up so that you can essentially sell your book of business to within the firm, or not really interested in growing staff, not really interested in growing it from that perspective. So we'll start helping them with the merger acquisition type aspect. So finding similar advisors from a value perspective and just aligned mentally, and like
Mm,
how you handle the clients, and ensuring that there's that handoff from your client perspective, that they're going to be continued to be taken care of the same way
mm,
that you want them and have been taking care of them. So finding kind of like the matchmaker
yeah.
aspect, and we briefly kind of talked about like dating. It's
Yeah.
it's a little bit of that in the world too. It's like figuring out advisors that you're going to have that business continuity and disaster recovery, not even necessarily for like the retirement, but if there is some sort of death or disability or just something that happens in your life that you don't have control over, what happens to your book and what happens to your business from there. Just
Yeah.
making sure that they've thought through kind of all the different things, same as like a trust or a will. It's just having that extra layer of protection. So
Yeah.
it looks like a lot of different things, but it's really getting them in the mindset of what ultimately are you trying to accomplish, and like who are you trying to accomplish it for? Is it for
Yeah.
your family? Is it for your kids? Are you looking like, hey, I want to build this up, retire, and just enjoy my life? What is the ultimate goal that is the driving force for what you're doing today? So that's kind of first and foremost. Second is then figuring out the strategy of, is that building it internal? Is that maintaining? Is that just finding somebody, in the matchmaking aspect? And then once you've figured out the strategy, really understanding what the true valuation of the business is. Because, okay, you may think my book of business is worth X. So it's worth X today, but what's it going to be in 5 years from now? Because, like you mentioned, there could be the attrition, the age out of the clients, just natural kind of the decay of the assets under management. So, ensuring if your succession plan is looking at like 10 years, is that valuation going to stay the same? Is it going to decline? Is it going to increase just based off of the data you have today? So, ensuring that they're also mapping out the strategy, but then understanding the implications of what they do today from growing the business or that generational wealth. you know, what's that going to do long term too when you're
That's
hitting your goal.
so important that you have that conversation. So, to kind of recap what you're doing there at Myriad Advisor Solutions is, it's beginning, middle, and end, right? It's like, you're helping people get their business started and making sure that it over time runs smoothly and can grow if they want to grow it. And then also helping them plan for what is, by the way, for everybody listening or watching, an inevitable end to the business, right? I say this frequently on the podcast, and I'm sure people are sick of it, but hey, Father Time is undefeated. He just is, right? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. LeBron James eventually will retire. I hate to tell you that Tom Brady finally retired. Everyone eventually it comes to the end, right? One way or another, it will end, and hopefully, it doesn't end with somebody dying on the job. But like the reality is, there will be a time where either if you aren't careful, the business has decayed enough where it's no longer worthy of you doing it, or all your clients are really old and they're like their families are taking over their assets,
Hmm.
right? Or hey man, like you just might have something going on in your life where it prohibits you from really working anymore, right? But so having a plan in place, understanding even if you have no immediate plans of selling, like okay, you mentioned I love that you talked about emergency continuity. Truelytics has a solution called True Continuity
Yep.
that is all about that. Like, what happens if you get hit by the bus or
Yep.
you have some other thing happen in your life? What do you do? Like, what will happen to your clients? What will happen to the business? Well, let's talk about what might happen. Right?
Yeah.
Like, list it out.
Yeah, and and from our side too, it's like, okay, you have it from your perspective. So like me, advisor, these are the things that are important to me. But if you're not the solopreneur or solo advisor and you have other advisors that you're partnered with, really understanding the partnership dynamics is important.
Mm,
That's like another area that we see kind of the big question mark, or ooh, I think we actually need to push on you a bit to have these conversations, because what we hear all the time is, oh well, I've worked with Bob for 30 years and I know Bob. Well, it's like, okay, I understand you know Bob for the last 30 years and that everything's good and glorious, but I'm sure you've also heard of divorce. And
yeah.
I'm sure when people get married, they think, I'm going to be with my wife or husband or whomever forever. I'm with
Yeah.
them till the end. But then 10 years down the road, people change, things change, environments change, and those
Mhm.
people got a divorce. So you also have to kind of talk through what that looks like from a partnership dynamic aspect, because you may be just thinking about, oh, when I'm looking to get out of the business, but maybe you're in the height of the business and there's some sort of issue or aspect that you need to work through with your partner. Well, we always advise people to essentially have that stuff outlined and defined when things are good,
Yeah.
not
You're
when
so
things hit the
smart.
fan.
That is, yeah. It's not the first time I'm hearing this, but it's always nice when you hear like certain things like pop up and like that's 100% so true. Like,
Yeah.
let's talk about. So this is very relatable. My son is a senior in high school and he's going to college, right? In the fall, we just went to this orientation for school, and they talked about that. Well, having effectively a roommate contract, like they're going to go through this roommate matching service and everything, so they can find the right ones. And then once he finds his roommate, they look for suite mates because it's going to be in a 4 dude suite effectively at the. But exactly what you're talking about, I think it's easily relatable. Like, what happens when we have a disagreement? It's inevitably going to happen, right? Some sort of issue is going to happen. What's the process look like for resolving those types of things? And hopefully it never gets to separation, but hey, what if separation happens? What does that look like as well? So smart to have that conversation. It's an uncomfortable conversation, of course, because you're effectively talking about like prenup for the business, but
Yeah.
save you a lot of legal fees, anxiety and sleepless nights if you knew ahead of time, like, okay, Bob wants to go his way. All right, Bob, that's fine. All right, let's
Yep.
go to the agreement. The agreement says this. Now, if you want to fight it legally, I guess you can, but like we talked about this. Like,
Yep. Yeah.
this is easy,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
really cool. It's in writing, Bob. No. Anyway, poor Bob is like, what the heck did I do? All right. So, anyways, all right. To wrap this thing up, so this is we're kicking for home here, but every once in a while, I go through these phases where I start asking guests kind of the same question, a recurring question. I don't always do it, but if you go back and listen through the series, you'll see that every once in a while I'll have like, several guests in a row where I've asked them the same question. And one that's been on my mind lately is, what are you watching with great interest, or what are you seeing bubbling up that you're keeping an eye on, right? Because the industry does evolve, it changes rapidly. As we were talking about, like, hey, look, if you got your start like I did in the early to mid 90s in this industry, you've seen a lot of changes, right? One
Hmm.
of them being in the internet. But so um, here we are, early stage, Q1 2023. What's most interesting to you right now? What are you seeing happening out there?
Yeah, I think it's just that evolution of the technology, really, not only from what you can utilize and add to your business from an enhancement standpoint, but then also just the regulatory changes. So,
Mm,
you know, it's like technology is a little ahead of those changes, and they're getting up to speed on the way of the world and the environment in which the advisor is truly managing those relationships. And so, from our standpoint in the last year, there's been a lot of discussion and changes in providing the flexibility for advisors to actually tap into the technology that is available. There's always kind of a running joke that the industry is like 10, 15 years behind everything else. It's like all antiquated stuff. But I think that we see that gap closing faster just because of the regulatory changes. And so, not only from our side do we need to stay up to date on what capabilities they can tap into and leverage, because the second that they're able to, we need to be able to jump on and allow them to use it.
yeah,
But then also where that conversation is from the SEC FINRA standpoint on allowing just the marketing rule change and just
sure.
how that is affecting the clients of what they're able to leverage and enhance their offering, or just even the communication with the client. So from our side, it's really twofold. It's like the regulatory piece, and then when they are saying this is a go, allowing us to jump on that go and the green light
Yeah,
of
that's
the
awesome.
different tech.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I just had another conversation not too long ago with Laura Gregg from FlexShares ETFs, and they did a study on outsourcing, right? On like how advisors are leveraging outsourcing. It's kind of feeding into some of your trends, because a lot of it's technology based, right? That advisors are enhancing their abilities really at a breakneck pace by being able to leverage other services, and whether that is investment management or other solutions, and solutions like yours and the ones that you advise and provide. It's changing the industry, right? Like, it's suddenly a one person shop, or two or three person shop can really present themselves and function just as strongly as a large firm.
Yeah.
So it's really, really an exciting time to be in the industry. So fantastic stuff. Well, we've reached the end of our time together, Danielle. So I think people are going to want to follow up with you, obviously. So what's the best way for people to reach out and get connected and get the ball rolling with you?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn, always great resource for me if I want to connect direct. So Danielle White, just on LinkedIn. And then our website, Myriad, AS as in applesam.com. And then that's Myriad, like a myriad of things. So like plethora.
Yes.
A lot of people think I say Marriott or something like that.
That's right. Well, we will make sure we get that linked up in the show notes so people don't have to guess and typos and so forth. But
I would
this
love
has
to
been
be
fantastic.
I would love to be the CEO of Marriott, but
Why not?
maybe
Yeah.
we'll get there one day. But
Fantastic. Well, you can stay at a Marriott. So there you go. You got
yes,
that going for you,
exactly,
right?
exactly.
Well, fantastic. Well, Danielle, this has been amazing. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Now, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to and or watching this episode of the Marta Financial Advisor podcast. It's always great to have you with us. Huge thanks to Danielle White from Myriad Advisor Solutions for joining us today. I love her perspective on running a thriving financial advisory business. Whether it's a lifestyle business or you are looking to grow a mega RIA, leveraging the strengths of others is the only way to go. All right, as I mentioned at the top of the show, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast platform if you haven't done so already, and give this episode a share on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you hang out online. Chances are, if you found it interesting, so will members of your network. Okay, that's it for today. As always, be nice to each other. We'll see you next time on the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast. See ya. Bye.